The Orthodox Christian has to be constantly aware that the invisible world is always active. We're extremely cautious with everything, including ourselves. We recognize that any thought or impulse we have may be from God, but it also may just be psychological from us, or it may be from the demons. And we have to recognize in all humility that we probably don't have the discernment to distinguish one from another. Well, the great saints and elders have that discernment. When we don't have that discernment, we tend to be pretty distrustful of ourselves, which is why we go to our spiritual father. But we are ever aware of the demonic world around us. At the same time, we're not hyper-focused on it. We don't become obsessed with it. We don't give more attention than it's due. And I think this is spiritually one of the dangers that people make, is that when they do have something happening in their spiritual life that they feel is demonic, sometimes if you begin to really worry about it and give it more focus than it's due, you actually strengthen it. For instance, people are sometimes surprised when they have one of their logis me, one of these random thoughts that comes up that's particularly kind of crazy. I'm driving down the road and out of the blue I have a thought with my kids in the back of the car to jerk the wheel and careen my car off the road and kill us all. And it's a fleeting thought, it's in and out. And I go, I've never had a thought like that before. What just happened? Well, if I give it hyper focus, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to strengthen it. I'm going to start worrying about it. I'm going to start giving it a power that it doesn't otherwise have. But if in those moments we can learn to say, I'm going to put my thoughts right back on Christ and just say, Lord, I know that thought was crazy. That didn't come from me. Clearly didn't come from you. Banish those thoughts from me and then go right back to your prayer life and your world of peace. You're going to be better off. I teach people all the time. I tell them one of the greatest spiritual tools I can give them is called the holy shrug. And the holy shrug is to take something that has happened and just say, okay, and go back to normal life. Because otherwise you give it way more credit than it's due. And if the thought isn't helping you, then why are you giving it attention in the first place? Don't let it live rent-free in your head. Go back to holy things and focus on those as much as possible. So the St. Porphyrios method is really the best. And that's to fight for Christ with your back to the demons, rather than trying to fight directly against the demons with your back to Christ. Having said all that, we do take the demonic very seriously. We're very cautious of it. And I've had experiences that have absolutely awakened me to not only how seriously we need to take the demonic, but also how much more power Christ has over the demonic.
What does demon possession mean? How do the Orthodox view, that concept?
Yeah, Saint Silouan the Athonite, he gives a really clear explanation on this when he talks about how that possession really comes in different stages. When we hear the word possession, we tend to think of the Hollywood type of possession, where somebody has lost control of themselves because a demon is controlling them. This type of thing does happen. I know priests who have done exorcisms on people that were almost out of a Hollywood movie. I mean, literally people levitating off the ground from demonic power, people speaking in languages they didn't know, and some really horrific things. But this is very rare. This is very rare. The demons much more so want to make us not aware of them. They want to make us not think about the spiritual world at all and just become obsessed with this world, the comforts and pleasures therein. And so there are many lesser levels of possession that we all have to deal with. And what St. Silouan says is this. He says, if you love your enemies, this is a sign that grace is within you. But if you hate your enemies, it's a sign that a demon is within you instead. Well, there's a certain level of possession. So possession really goes in different stages. But this is why the Orthodox baptismal service begins with an exorcism. The very first thing we do is we stand in the back of the church, and the priest makes the sign of the cross and breathes on the candidates, and then does 3 prayers of exorcism. St. Diadocos of Photikis says that what's happening in these prayers is that the nature of man is being restored. He says that before one is made a Christian, the demons and evil work from within the heart, and grace works from the outside, as if knocking on the door. But after baptism, and especially after these prayers, everything is reversed. Now grace naturally works from within, and the demons are the ones trying to attack from the outside. This is often why people after baptism experience much more difficult and violent demonic attacks on their spiritual life, as the demons are now trying to reclaim their territory. And this is exactly why Christ gives us the example after baptism of going into the desert to do what? To do battle with Satan. So we know that the demons are going to fight against us. So every Orthodox Christian, if you've been brought into the church, has experienced an exorcism on themselves. But you do get cases where exorcisms are done on people or places in which it's a much deeper, higher level of possession. And I will tell you, I haven't done an exorcism like that with a person, but I have been part of exorcisms of places that were absolutely covered with demonic energy, and the experience is utterly life-changing. The most extreme case that I was a part of, I won't give any details of the place, but I will say that this was out in a more deserted area, and it was a series of buildings. And it just so happened that there had been stories in this area for many, many years of people seeing and hearing things that sounded ghostly or something like that, and sounded demonic. And the particular year that I was there, the activity increased exponentially. I actually wasn't a priest yet, but we did call in a priest and asked him to look at this area, and he consulted with some people who were more familiar with exorcisms. And after hearing all the stories, he decided that we were going to do the exorcism service of the church, which is just some prayers of St. Basil and St. John Chrysostom, and do them in every single building of this area. I will tell you that before he came, being outside at night alone was terrifying. I myself experienced seeing someone in a distance staring at me, and as I walked closer, they completely disappeared. And I heard behind me footsteps when I was walking outside. And I will tell you that they were, in the middle of the night, as clear as could be, the sound of footsteps right behind me. And then you turn around and you see nothing there. Very few things have taught me how to pray the Jesus Prayer like that night. That was a terrifying night. And everyone who was there was experiencing things like this, hearing voices and other such things. What was incredible was, while that was terrifying, we saw the power of Christ, and we saw how much Christ has absolute power over the invisible world. What happened was we did the exorcism prayers for hours. It took hours to go from building to building and do them in every single one. But the next day we had an interesting situation. The night after these exorcism services, some of us were out at night, and we noticed there was a palpable difference. And some people may think this was simply psychological, but I'll tell you it wasn't. Being outside felt peaceful. You wanted to sleep outside under the stars. It just felt completely different. And of course, even we were wondering, is this just psychological? It certainly didn't feel psychological. It felt like this was an otherworldly peace that had entered this area. And then the next morning, something really fascinating happened. Even though this was kind of a secluded area out in the wilderness, we never considered the fact that we rarely ever saw animals around that area. But the morning after the exorcisms, it was like a Disney movie. Deer, owls, rabbits, all over the place. As if nature itself recognized that demonic energy was gone, and they all flooded there. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced. And again, the lesson for me was not to fear the demonic as much as it was as to stick close to Christ, because Christ's power over the demonic was so incredibly palpable. It was an unforgettable experience.
What type of things open us up to the demonic? What are things that we should avoid, in our day-to-day lives that we might not be aware of, that are actually might open up doors for demons to enter into our lives?
Just don't sin, and you don't have to worry about it. It's simple. So, obviously, whenever we sin, we align ourselves. This is kind of what salvation will be. Is one of the ways of looking at salvation is have we aligned ourselves more with the angels or the demons? They're going to argue about what do our souls look like? Do they look more demonic or more angelic? And so, really, just struggling in the spiritual life for Christ and constantly seeking His grace and His forgiveness is a protection in and of itself. It's also wise to stay away from any spiritual practices that are not orthodox, especially those that participate in the occult. Some people make light of these things, and they don't actually think they're participating in them, the Ouija board and things like that. But even in other areas, becoming obsessed with horror movies and those types of things. In the vast majority of cases, are you going to see direct and overt possessions after these? No, probably not. But we do acclimate ourselves to evil in that sense. To be entertained by evil is a really, really odd thing. To be entertained by watching somebody go around and kill people is odd. And to be entertained by some of the demonic movies is odd. So I had a man in my first parish come up to me right as I was about to begin Orthros one Sunday. And he asked me, do you Orthodox do exorcisms? Now, whenever somebody asks you that, there's a story behind it. So I said, tell me what happened. I said, I have to start the service in about 5 minutes, so I don't have a lot of time, but tell me what happened. He said that he thought it would be funny to take some occult imagery and to make on Halloween a fake casket with a rope and to drag it around town. And just to kind of mock some of the Christian beliefs about death and the demonic and things like that. And he said ever since he had done that, he had felt a presence behind him. And that he was waking up in the middle of the night with scratches on his body, hearing growling. And at one point he woke up and he saw a dark figure above him with this hot breath right on his face. And he said no matter what he had done, he couldn't get rid of it. This was about 3 weeks after Halloween. And he said he really regretted what he had done. I told him, listen, I don't have a lot of time right now, and I was a very new priest. I needed to kind of consult at that time. But I said, I need to go start the service, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to stay. And if you can't stay right now, come back for liturgy. Come back for the divine liturgy, and afterwards, I promise you we'll talk. Unfortunately, he never showed up again. He left and didn't come back. I have no idea what happened to him to this day. But that is one of many cases I've seen of people who have dabbled with mocking the demonic or dabbling in occultism and having significant problems afterwards.
What about things that might seem harmless, like listening to secular music, rap music, where a lot of the themes that are being talked about in the music is like killing, but some people rationalize it and like, well, I'm not thinking about those things. I just like the energy of the song and I like how it makes me feel.
Yeah.
What about things like that?
Yeah, I remember growing up, I was into rock and alternative, and I remember somebody once calling rock demonic, and I laughed, and I said, it's just utterly ridiculous. This is not demonic music. They're not talking about demons. They're not worshiping demons. There's no demonic imagery in the bands that I was following. But as I grew older and hopefully matured a bit, I started to see that when we say that things are demonic, we don't necessarily mean demonic in the overt sense. What we mean is that there's something about this that displays a demonic energy. It's kind of interesting. I would listen to some of that music, and I would notice that I would be an angrier person after listening to it. Or sometimes I would just be more secular. I would have a looser sense of morals. So these things do get into us, and we have to believe that. We have to believe that what enters the body in the senses doesn't then just pass through and leave us without leaving its mark.